FoodGrads and program partner of Careers Now. I'm joined today by Shahina, who's going to introduce herself in just one moment, but we're thrilled you're joining us. We're here to talk to you today, from a perspective of newcomers to Canada, from a perspective of joining the food and beverage industry. We've got 5 talking points that we want to cover. The first is, why should you consider a job in the food and beverage industry? Developing your employment search plan, job search strategies, newcomers entering the labour market, and skills for success. We are happy to answer any questions you might have during this broadcast, but we have included our email addresses so you can contact us afterwards if you'd rather go that route. And I will also bring your attention to our careersnow.ca website, where you can access free job fairs, you can access training, as well as previous mentorship sessions that we have aired on a multitude of different career paths available, from product development to sales to accounting. We literally cover all different career paths in the food and beverage industry, and we have those sessions available to you on the website. So I will hand things over to Shahina to introduce herself, and then we'll go straight into why you should look at the food and beverage industry as a place to work.
Thank you, Nicole. I'm looking forward to having this conversation with you. So as you said, my name is Shahina. I am a program manager and a facilitator in a community agency based in Toronto. So we have 2 sites, one in Etobicoke and one sort of close to downtown on the Danforth. So the program that I work on is a workforce development program called Elevate. I have been facilitating for over 5 years, with a view of sort of supporting newcomers as well as Canadians get a job entry level in food and beverage manufacturing. So we have a really great curriculum. We really provide great connections with our employer partners. We have some really great, really amazing employment counselors who work with the individual to help them build their resume, to help them with interview tips, career coaching, career advice, with the view of getting them really well positioned so that they can enter the food and beverage industry. So I've been doing it for about 5 years, and it's a real pleasure to be with you here today, Nicole. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. We really appreciate it. As I mentioned, we've done some mentorship sessions already, but we haven't done one specifically for newcomers in the industry, which we know from our employers, it's a huge area for them. It's where they find a lot of people that do enter the industry, and we know that once people join the industry, they tend to stay and they can be trained and add to their education and really progress in their career. So I can talk about why the food industry is amazing, but I'll hand it to you in terms of why you think newcomers should look at the food and beverage industry specifically.
Yeah, Nicole, something that you just mentioned, I think that when you enter the food and bev industry, the opportunities and the options are vast. And this is something that I tell newcomers, that, we think of food and beverage, and it is. I'm not going to gloss over certain things. It is physical, it is standing, but, the options in the industry are great, so that there are lots of different opportunities that you can create. And something you just mentioned, people enter the food and beverage industry, and, now they have gone into opportunities which are in management. And, they've really carved out great futures for themselves, quality of life for their families. So it is really a great industry. But, I'll just go through some of the information just to sort of help newcomers decide about this industry. And one of them, the big pieces, is it's a large industry for Ontario. So the food and beverage is a large manufacturing industry in Ontario. With so many newcomers arriving in Canada or considering a job transition, it is a job that they will find fulfilling. Absolutely. It's reasonably well paid, and there are lots of great opportunities for advancement. So I think that, although I focus upon getting people into the entry level, I do see many, many different opportunities opening up. Right now, we hear in the news, it's, the labor market is going through a major change. there's a shift taking place. And I think that for newcomers right now, this is a great opportunity to enter the labor market. There was a recent report that just came through that found that 7 to 10 employers are facing challenges finding workers. So newcomers coming in, with a little bit of coaching, mentoring, and some support work that's probably needed, and probably, I think it's good to have, they will be well positioned to get some really good jobs. The other piece is, the industry has 11 subsectors. So we just think about perhaps say meat, which is pretty large, or poultry. There is fruits and vegetables. There is beverage. There is pastries, tortilla manufacturing, dairy. So don't just sort of think, oh, it's on just one part. It's a huge industry. And the other piece is you can really enter the industry at entry level. And your experience, your prior academic knowledge, all that is needed. Our employer partners want that. And so I think the key is, keep an open mind and, look at this industry as being, hey, I can build a future for myself and my family here.
That's a great point, I think, about the fact that employers will hire and you can grow in your career. From my experience, I also work as a third-party recruiter, and definitely found that in this industry, there's a sense of promoting from within, loyalty. If you've come in at the entry level and proved yourself, proved your work ethic, all that sort of thing, and then shown that you are willing to learn and develop, you put your hand up and say, I want to progress, then employers do value that. What is that what you're finding as well?
Yeah, I'm finding that employers, but firstly, they want to give newcomers opportunities. And I think that we need to be aware that there are some really great employers who are really willing to sort of invest in the talent that they're hiring. And once the newcomer arrives, it is really the emphasis is on the newcomer to learn. And learn the different sort of work processes, understand the policies, do a really great job, and turn up for work. Employers say we're looking for people that can turn up for work, who have good time management skills, use initiative, and the number one thing employers say is to be able to understand and give instructions. And so I think that comes up to us to sort of say, hey, how am I doing? Go to a supervisor, ask a supervisor, how am I doing? Which are the areas I can improve upon? And I think that this is another area that perhaps at a later date, Nicole, maybe looking at feedback, understanding feedback. What did you mean when you told me to do this? Because, newcomers are coming from a totally different culture to what we have in Canada. And sometimes, the fact that I have to ask questions is not something I'm used to. I never did that back home. Right? So it's like now saying to newcomers, hey, you got to be able to ask questions, but they feel shy, they're intimidated, they're nervous. And I think it's helping newcomers coach and help them be mentored into that position.
That's a great point. Different cultures and employers need the education on that too, to draw that information out. In some cultures, it's deemed disrespectful to ask questions or be too open with their employers, whereas here I think we definitely encourage that, and employees need that to know that the person's engaged and wants to grow and progress in their career. So yeah, and one of the things I would add about the industry, while we're on point number one still, is it's kind of recession proof and COVID proof. I know I kind of talked about this when my focus on students and grads, and how if you're going to spend all the money in education and building your skill set, choose an industry that's going to be around. We all eat, and the population is only growing. So globally, the growing demand for food is there. So that you're going to have a job for life essentially. And once you're in the industry, I feel like, from my experience, people stay. They don't tend to. They've got the industry experience, and they're sought after because they have that industry experience. You need the food safety and all those elements as well. So, in terms of the employers that you work with, would you have any, I know we're going to move on to number 2, but is there sort of anything else you can elaborate on there with regards to how to work with the employers, and maybe even some advice for employers on how to work with newcomers?
Sure, it's a really great question. So I think I just need to go back to say when the pandemic struck. So my program was very much face-to-face. It was very much, come to the classroom. You connect with maybe a group of 15 people. So the cohort was 15 people. Very much, the emphasis was on developing your soft skills. Looking at all the different elements about being a team player, talking about time management, talking about attitude, talking about being adaptable. And then we talk about the technical employer required skills. And then we work with the employment counselors and the job developers. But when the pandemic hit, like everybody else, we had to really think differently, think creatively. And so what we did was we created a totally virtual. And I have to say, newcomers really took to that really positively. Many agencies, many people were, like on a lockdown. They were not able to connect with a lot of agencies, but many newcomers came to the program. They learned virtually, and they'd only arrived a month. And after a month, they got a job in the food and beverage industry. And it's coming back to what you mentioned. It is recession proof. New products are being created, new products are being developed. And, when you are sort of supporting the newcomer to say, there's a variety of skills that you have, you learn, you add to your skill set, you're going to help the employer. I found that, the employers that we have, they were providing positions at entry level, but within about a month of the person being there, they got promoted to supervisor. So, that is huge in a month to get a job and then sort of say, hey, and then they will say, Shahina, do you have anybody else? We're looking for new people to come in. So I think the employer partners were very receptive to newcomers coming. They really, there are some issues that I think that employers perhaps, I'm sure they're aware of this, but it is the daycare. It is access to childcare. Childcare doesn't open till about 9. That's if you have childcare, maybe even earlier, and you've got to be on a shift by 6 o'clock. So, many people are finding that really a challenge. But, they were offering shifts which started at 9:30. So there was space and time to make it to the shift. So, employers realized that they needed to sort of change things also. And they did. And many of our, the newcomers, took advantage of that, and they had jobs that were created really well and they positioned well for themselves. And Nicole, I have somebody that she a newcomer, she had a university degree, just arrived in Canada maybe about say 6 months, and she was looking for a job on the production line, and there were lots of interviews she went for, and in the end she found the ideal position for her. She lives in Scarborough, the job is in Mississauga. And, maybe about, say, 6 months, 7 months after, when I speak with her, she says that, the minute that when I got in, I learned the ropes. I worked hard. I really showed up for work, and I did more things than was my job description. Very soon after, they were willing to make changes for me so that I could pick up and drop my children. And she says, my children are now in Montessori school. That is a big, play forward, that you're creating the income in order to send your children to this school and spend time with your children. So I just am so proud of the people that are working in this industry, how hard they work. And there are so many people that have a good quality of life by working in this industry. And I have to also thank the employers. They are just amazing. They're listening. They're wanting to change some of the hiring practices, and they really go extra to engage with newcomers and learn the diversity piece.
That's great to hear, and I do think it's often challenging. This industry is up against other industries, that perhaps can pivot faster, and there are things that some other industries can do that food can't. For example, with COVID, there was a lot of hybrid roles. The nature of the food industry is there are a ton of roles that require somebody to be on site. It is what it is. And so I think that's a challenge. So the fact that you mentioned, being open to varying shifts, maybe looking at the team and saying, well, this person can come in earlier, and it allows for this person, coverage while this person needs to come in later. I think is huge. And it also opens the door for equality, because I feel like we have improved, but still a vast number of women are the carers for children. So it allows a larger group of women to be, to start work in this industry. And it is one that does generally have an equal amount, or more, a few more men, but equal amount of men and women. So I think that's big as well to be able to offer that. And the last, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just thinking that, newcomers have, diverse skill set. They do various duties back in their own home country or as a family person. And I think that, sometimes that's just untapped. We put on the resume only those pieces which we think are appropriate and fitting for the job. But when you have a one-on-one with a newcomer, you suddenly learn that person can also, has interest in being a millwright, but they're also great production workers, and they're really great at perhaps documentation. I mean, that's a lot of skills. And sometimes, newcomers just need to be aware that, behind that person, that, the person will not themselves project all of these things, but that person has a lot of different skills and strengths that we just need to tap into.
Yeah. And, one point I was going to make is 90% of businesses in the food and beverage industry in Ontario alone are small to medium size. So it's kind of like under 100 people. So you do have the opportunity to work across departments. So I really like that comment, that if you have someone that's a little bit more on the shy side and doesn't feel like speaking out, then they can work in different departments, wear multiple hats, as we say, and showcase, and all of a sudden look at their project management skills, look at their ability to communicate and bring a team together, different soft skills that perhaps in the role they were in, they wouldn't have known that they could do. So
and I advise newcomers, and also not just newcomers, even Canadians that are thinking of a career transition. And you can get a career, it's a job, but the job builds into a career, and there's some really great careers in this industry. And I think that you've got to be prepared to work hard, but have a vision, have a plan. And sometimes and I see this every day. I see this. I sort of do mentor newcomers in the training program, that we are all doing things. For example, doing this today with you, I had to sort of also go into my comfort zone and move out of my comfort zone and move into to a learning area. And I say the same thing to newcomers, that sometimes you may find the first day, the first week challenging. It's not going to be easy, but if you give up, then you've just given up an opportunity. And I think that sometimes, decision making, you just don't want to fly off and make a decision. You want to really think about it, ask somebody's advice, look at some of the key aspects of this, and then make a decision. And usually your supervisor will help you with that decision. They will make things easy for you. But, newcomers are feeling a little bit shy. They're nervous. They don't know how to approach a supervisor.
And we have a good question that's popped up about training. One thing I will say is, often in a smaller organization, you might not have somebody, promoting training. That you're in a company, they have production timelines, they have a bottom line, and your career path may not be front and center to them, but you can. I think you'll cover it in a little while, but you can create your sort of 5-year plan, and there are resources out there outside of your company that can help you do that. And we have a question here. So on the careersnow.ca website, you can access free training in all different areas: food safety, GMP, all related to the food and beverage industry. It is provided by Food Processing Skills Canada. And I know your program, certainly can you may add there. I can go ahead and answer the next question too. Also, should I work for a small or large company? We can tackle that one together, but it really does depend on your interests. I would say there's good and bad with both. In my experience and in talking to candidates at the entry level as well as at the senior level, small environment will give you a lot of hands-on in different departments. It's less process driven and less red tape. You might work directly with the president or the owner of the company, so it could be fast-paced. Decisions are made quickly, and you can learn a lot. There are amazing training grounds for learning. The downside, I would say, you might find, without that process, things can get a little hectic, and maybe that's not for you. If you thrive in a very structured environment, I'd probably look at a larger organization for certainly when you're starting out. But you might certainly find yourself in a silo doing the same thing as opposed to different departments, because that's your role and they have someone in that department or several people in that department. So go ahead and answer those questions yourself if you'd like.
Yeah, I think it's very individual. I would need to be able to speak with the person, perhaps look at their previous experience or look at their interests. I think that, we go to work and we want to make it fulfilling. We want it to be a place that I go to and I want to do a job that I feel accomplished with. So that question is a great question, but you'd have to sort of unlayer quite a few of those pieces. I think that in a small company, you're very much involved in doing many of the tasks. So I think there's that variety. You will learn a lot of the tasks, and it's going to be pretty fluid. One day you're on the production line, the next day you might be packing, the third day you might be sort of, organizing a group of people to start the shift. I mean, that could be something, if that's you, that would be just ideally suited for you. A large company, I think that it depends again upon the company. You would need to do a good sort of research of that company. There are some companies out there that really treat you like family. You're not just the individual, you are part of the family. They have a learning plan. So large companies will have investment dollars to put for your learning and your growth. And I think that is an important consideration. On the first one, the smaller company, you're very much learning on the job, developing for yourself. But when new opportunities come, you will get a good position because, people are opening up new sites, new product development. So you will be in a really good position. On the larger company, there is going to be investment in training. There's going to be some really great processes. There are people that I know that are working, and they started on the line as they were just sort of packing, bakery goods like muffins and donuts and things. And it was a great job. And she, the job seeker after the training program, did it for about 6 months. And then I go back in and check how's everything going. What's happening at your end. And she was enjoying the job. She was part of the family. She had made some really great relationships. And for newcomers, remember, we've left our family behind. We're developing networks. So the job gives us that sort of feeling that I belong someplace. I have people who make me feel happy and I feel confident and builds my self-esteem. So she was enjoying being around her peers. And then maybe a year later, I said, so what's happening now? How are you doing? Because we do also provide the check-in after the program. And she said, Shahina, they're implementing a HACCP plan. And they want to provide me a role to be the HACCP implementation person. And so she says, I want to do that. And then the employer found for her some HACCP training, and she became the HACCP coordinator. And now she's very much involved also in the recruitment piece. So she sits on a panel and, asking all those questions to do with health and safety and HACCP and quality. And so, starting from production line packing to a bit of a supervisor / managerial role. So I think you've got to weigh up a lot of things before you can make that one decision. But I also see people will start with a small company, end up with a large company. And then I also see people start with a large company and end up with a family, very small company.
Yeah, and that's the beauty of the industry. You can move around. There's always opportunity once you start in the industry. You don't have to stay with the company. You can move around, I think we can probably move on to the next topic. I know we could probably continue to talk about this one. And again, if we have to do a follow-up session, I'm happy to. So developing your employment search plan, what do you encourage newcomers to do when they come to you with that sort of, when they're at that point?
Perfect. That's a really great question. So, when we are arriving into the country, and in the beginning, there's settlement needs. Maslow's theory, we do need housing, we do need to have access to transport, we need to have money to pay for utilities, we need to get the school sorted out and the food on the table. I mean, those are the things we need. And I think that it doesn't hurt even at that stage to have a vision. What is my vision? What is it I want to do? And what am I looking for? And I'm not discounting your previous experience. I'm not saying your previous academic qualifications are not important. They are so important. They will be needed by the employers. But at that stage, you also have to make some concrete changes. And you have to ask yourself some of these hard questions. Because those hard questions, and when you answer them with your family members or with somebody in your family, your decision making will be a little bit more planned out, and your where you're going will be a little bit planned out. So for me, having a good employment search plan is really sort of mapping out your short-term, medium, and your long-term goals. And for newcomers, or even for Canadians, I mean, it's pretty hard having a goal. It's a hard thing. And so again, reach out to lots of community agencies. You and I, we're sort of working on these sort of projects. There are access to supports. So access those supports, and that should be part of our employment search plan. I think the other piece is, then you build upon having perhaps a Canadian style resume. There is a Canadian style of a resume, and which is different to my home style resume. And I'm proud of my academic knowledge. I'm proud of, my first school. I'm proud of my community college. I'm proud of my university. But you've got to sort of, just keep it brief, succinct, make it sharp, get somebody to proofread your job resume. And there's also different types of job resumes. There's a functional one, or there's a skills-based one. And so I think that you do need to have somebody who can support you with having a really great sort of Canadian style resume. In addition, you probably want to access some settlement supports, which, there are lots of agencies. And then, have connect with people who will give you good advice. And take the advice. That's the other thing. We will give lots of advice, but taking the advice is hard. I mean, even for me, to take advice, I want to do it my way. And then I realized, I should have listened to you, because, it would have been a lot more easier. So I think it's really important that the advice and the coaching that you get, especially as a newcomer, I think it's important that we heed that, listen to that, ask questions around that, and then you do your own research. Indeed, the agencies you and I are working with, there's lots of employer partners. Research, look at where the jobs are. We begin by asking, our participants to identify 3 to 5 employers that they would like to work for. So we want you to do your own search. We want you to be proactive. We can't get all the answers for you, but you've got to be, a little bit sort of involved in that process. So those points are part of the employment search plan, but there's lots of other things I'm sure we can talk about still.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think you hit on some great points. The transportation piece, I think, is huge. Like you said, when you first arrive, you don't necessarily have access to a car. It may take 6 months, a year before you have that. So choosing your employer based on public transport. And I will add that there's a lot of companies that are very aware of that are trying to make allowances for newcomers, for people that perhaps don't have their own transport. I know one in particular that did lobby with the city to get a bus stop right outside. They're a very, very large manufacturer, and it worked. So I think companies are very aware of that too. It's not a case that they won't hire you if you don't have public transit, or if you rely on public transit. Obviously, there's on the flip side, in the food industry, there are a lot of rural companies. So either you decide to move there, or you might not be the most desirable candidate because you don't have a car. And that's another one of your, I think, part of the decision making is: do you want to stay in a big city, or do you want to? Does the smaller village, if you will, make more sense to you? Because that's important too. If you have those opportunities in the food industry, there's very much that hub in, say, Toronto. in the GTA, but there are a lot of companies in rural areas as well.
Yeah, Nicole, that comes to mind. So some of the employers which are sort of in the east side of, like, say, Toronto, and they will pick up people in their company coach or a school bus kind of thing, and they will meet them at the GO station, and then they will take them there, and they will take them back. There are companies there who are so generous; they give you free lunch. You get paid lunch, not free lunch, paid lunch. Then they also provide you the PPE. So, I think that you really want to do the homework. And there are some companies, literally, that come to my mind right now, and they are so great, family-oriented, organizations. And so, again, it comes back to your vision. What is your plan? What is it you want to do? Once you're here, you want to build a career profile. And that's another part about the employment search plan, is that you want to use the first, 0 to 5 years, perhaps. If you've arrived at 0 and for 5 years, you want to develop a solid career history, because you want to build up a network. And so by me going to my job, I will connect with the supervisor. I will connect with my coworkers. I will connect with other things that are happening in the work. And so when I need it, I can use that as my reference. And that is part of the employment search plan, because newcomers, they get sort of trapped into not having Canadian work experience. But then how do I get my work experience? How do I get a job if I don't have my Canadian work experience? And it's that catch-22. But I think, don't think it, oh my God, this is a survival job, and I'm just going to get this so that I can pay for my bills. No, think of it as a really great stepping stone to build. And you've got to have that attitude. And I think this is where newcomers really need to develop that attitude that says, I'm fully invested with my employer. I'm going to do a really great job for my employer, because you want to build loyalty. Right?
Yeah. I can't emphasize that enough. It's such a great point. And it really does come through speaking to people. I mean, as I mentioned, we did mentorship sessions last year through Careers Now, and pretty much, I mean, by and large, there's such a bias for promoting from within this industry, because people, I think it's the family-run thing in a lot of situations, and the fact that they know the business, if they've started from the grass level, grassroots up, and if they put their hand up and show willing and show the work ethic and the ability to work within a team and all that sort of thing, they really will have a career and not just that survival job, as you mentioned.
I totally agree. I think you mentioned, having that willingness. And for a lot of newcomers, many of us. I mean, I am from I'm from East Africa, and prior to being in East Africa, I went to the UK, and I came from the UK. I came to Canada, and again, I needed to sort of have Canadian work experience. And so another part of developing an employment search plan is to strategize. Have a strategy. Where are you heading? What do you want? Have a look. Have a really great self-reflection piece. What am I missing? Where can I improve? And I think for newcomers, especially for whom English isn't the first language, there's a great tendency to think that, I want to speak like native English speakers. I want to be like a native English speaker. My language isn't good. I cannot understand. I don't have the grammar. It's holding me back. And I think that, until somebody helps you to build that self-esteem and that confidence, you will believe that. But Canadian employers, Canadian supervisors are so generous, so forgiving, really amazing. And they can see the intention that comes through your eyes and your heart and your attitude. And language is important, especially for health and safety. I'm not saying language isn't important. You want to be safe. You want to be able to follow instructions. But you can sort of say, I need to work with somebody to help me develop my speaking or my listening. And so I think it's about having that personal development, that I need to grow. I need to learn these things. And sometimes you can learn those things in the job.
And you're right. A lot of the employers are, in fact, immigrants themselves. You know, a lot of them come from other countries. And so I think that piece is critical to know that people are empathetic. I'm from the UK, and when I first arrived 20 years ago now, very much was told you don't have the specific Canadian work experience. And what I found the most challenging is nobody really told me what that was. Other than, what am I missing? And no one could articulate. It was just a case of, well, you haven't worked here. Okay, so what are the differences? What do I need to work on? And I can't say I recall having that support or those answers. You just kind of learn on the job. You got a job, and then you figured it out as you went along, and then that issue is gone because you've got years under your belt. But I think that you're right. We do have a particularly understanding, empathetic industry. Food brings people together. Yeah. If you're from a different country, and the company that you join, you mentioned tortillas, or the particular product that they make, bring your love of cooking and your passion for cooking into the workplace, and you could end up in a different department supporting in culinary or product development. There really is no, the door is open if the willingness is there, I think.
Absolutely. And Nicole, two case studies come to mind as you were mentioning, and this is literally, during the pandemic. It was winter time. It was a really bad winter, maybe last year or the year before. And there was this one, actually three stories come to mind. If we have time, I can just sort of quickly go over them.
Yeah.
So this one person, had just recently arrived from another country, a month here in Canada. She graduated the program really successfully. She had a young baby. She left her baby with her roommate. We supported her as B2B, generous. Again, the employers here are so generous. They supported her during the pandemic to have an Uber with Uber money so that she could get to like a 5 a.m. shift plucking the feathers from a chicken factory.
Yeah.
And that was hard work. It was hard work, but she did it. And now she's still continuing in that same company. And the other person, highly had high academic achievements. So, a master's, perhaps even a PhD, was in product development. Really listened to support and advice that we provided. Did the night shift as a production production supervisor. Did the night shift, lived somewhere in Brampton, came to Etobicoke, changed 2 buses, leaving the baby with the mom. And again, these are stories of newcomers who have gone through the hard part. I'm sure you have stories in family. I have stories like this where people have done some really hard things. But now you can say, well, I survived that. I achieved that. That makes me stronger. And I think that you've got to look at those stories, because those stories really give you the idea about how people have resilience and do this. And just very quickly, the other third person, again, a single mom. She was living in the North Toronto, somewhere near Markham or Richmond Hill, and there was a job in Etobicoke, and it was a great job. She again would leave her baby with her friend, and she would come for a 6 morning shift. And she did the job really well. But then, our advice was the same. You want to look for options in the company. Look for where are you growing. Use initiative. This person is still in that company, and she had a long commute. But after maybe 6 months going past probation, she found housing nearby. She has a car. These are the things as a newcomer we want. Having a place of our own to live in is the thing we strive for, because that's a place of belonging. I feel attached when I have my own place, and every newcomer can get that dream, but you got to do some hard work to get there.
I 1,000% agree. I remember talking to somebody that worked in an abattoir here, and it's not the most desirable. There are plenty of positions like that, and I said it's challenging to find people that will work in that environment, and she said, some people are hypocrites that won't work in that environment or won't even look, but they eat meat and enjoy meat, but they don't want to. They almost want to block it out how it got to our plate. And she said, "Are you kidding me? Working here for she'd been there a long, long time. I think she was there 20 years or something." And she said, "This job put my kids through college. You know, she said, working here enabled me to give my kids an education, and they didn't have to go into debt." You know, that she was so proud. And I thought, you know, there is a job for everybody, and there are some roles that, you know, some people won't do. But there's always a role that, you know, that somebody will do everything. If it means they can put food on the table, put their kids through school, and, you know, there's all manner of those types of positions in this industry. So you just need to seek it out and do all the things we've talked about. I see we have a couple more questions here. What search strategies would you recommend for job seekers who are shy or not used to being assertive?
That's a really great question. What job search strategies? I think it's really sort of connecting with somebody who you know, maybe a family member who's already working, perhaps connecting with an agency. You know, there are some really great employment counselors, you know, skills upgrading programs. There's a lot in Toronto, a lot in Canada, and I think it's about identifying, you know, showing up perhaps at maybe a webinar. You know, there are lots of things happening. Indeed runs quite a few things. Being on Facebook where there are job postings, hiring fairs. You know, you don't really need to project yourself too much outside. You can sort of be off camera if you feel that's more comfortable. But I think the key is to build that connection. You know, you, even if it's that one person, build that connection and find somebody that would be your you know, your buddy. A buddy is always good. Work with a buddy. Just like when I was at school, you know, we had people that I did my homework with. I think it's very similar to that. Have somebody that you can work with and that you can sort of help each other through the process.
Yeah.
It is what I would think, yeah.
Keep each other motivated. I think the pandemic has helped with that. There were a lot of introverts that loved the pandemic because all of a sudden everything was online. The in-person events weren't happening, and I hope to a certain degree that sort of hybrid continues, because I think it allowed a lot of people to join events that they wouldn't ordinarily go to if they had to physically drive, you know, park. That whole piece could be so overwhelming to certain individuals. And then the in-person event. So there's a lot of events that they can attend, you know, online like this. And that did open that door. The pandemic did open that door. And I think a lot of companies and, you know, whether it's associations, you know, helping people to find jobs, are keeping, I know we're keeping a piece of that. You know, we do job fairs. They're not in person. They are digital. So you can show up to a job fair and you can have a chat online, and you can write, it's as simple as writing in a question and then, you know, sending in your resume. So you really don't have to be that amazingly confident person that can just, you know, hold everyone's attention in a room. I think you'll be surprised that most people are not that person, actually.
Yeah. And you know, Nicole, I think the thing is that, you know, when you are sort of connecting, going to a job fair, you have a virtual, you know, a screening interview or a virtual interview. This is the space where you can share and you can say. And I think that, you know, there is diversity. There is diversity. Employers understand, you know, they're not expecting people to be very bubbly and full of life every day. I think, you know, we aren't. I'm not that all the time.
No.
And so sometimes I need downtime. I need to be alone. I need to process things differently. I think employers respect that because that is diversity. I think that there are times when you really do need to speak up. You need to be part of the team. And I think that is where you do need to think a little bit differently. That am I demonstrating that? But other than that, you know, there are those production lines where you are just doing your job. You are part of a group of people on my production line, but I'm not connecting with people on my right or my left. I'm keeping pace and I'm doing my work as I'm expected to, and then I will go home. So, you know, although it may feel like, oh, this is so much fearful and it's scary, full of anxiety, you can sort of bring it down to something that works for you.
Find your people, right? There's an old saying, birds of a feather flock together. You're going to find your crew. Because guarantee, however you're feeling, there's somebody that feels the same. It just takes time. You know, we all did it when we were at school, like you mentioned, college. We just find the people that, that make you feel good and motivate you. And I think that's really important. I think that does happen in the workplace as well. Is there sorry.
Just very quickly, sorry to interrupt. I just think, also there is a space for being honest. Just being honest with the hiring person, or when you go for a job interview. I think, that goes a long way, rather than masking certain things. Be honest and sort of say, I process things differently, or, I'm from a different generation that does things a little bit differently. And I think that, when you open up and you're honest, sometimes people say, well, that's going to not work in your favor. I disagree. I think employers will be able to see through your honesty and your intention.
I agree. We have another question there about support. And is there a place that or support out there to help you make a job search plan? And I would absolutely say, Shahina, your organization, what you do right there is a support. I would also add that we have a coach, a job seeker coach, as part of our Careers Now team, who can help you, guide you. To your point, build your network. My advice would be go on LinkedIn, create a LinkedIn profile, make sure you're connecting with people. Make it a two-way street. I wouldn't go flying into LinkedIn asking for things too much. I think you need to make it a two-way street. I'm interested in your company. If you have 5 minutes, don't ask for an hour meeting. People are busy. If it turns into longer than that in the meeting, that's great. Because it means they're enjoying the conversation as well. But yeah, I would certainly say, I see it popping up on the screen. Yeah, we have free job coaching through Careers Now as well. So did you want to add to that?
Yeah, I just think, Nicole, both our agencies, we work pretty closely together. And, there is a space for both companies or both agencies and more agencies to work together, because our intention really is just, the main one is to get people into the industry. And then that connects with employers to find and secure a good talent. I mean, that really is our main aim. Employment Ontario, they have a lot of various community agencies in Canada, in Toronto. So if you're in Mississauga, there's something in Mississauga. If it's in Brampton, it's in Brampton. I mean, you could just send me an email. My email is on screen. Just send me an email. We'll be able to guide you. And I think that, the employment counselors are trained career development professionals. And so what they will do is they will get to meet with you. They will understand your needs. They will give you some options. They'll help you through the process. And I think that this could really help you to develop that plan. And I think what they will do is perhaps ignite that fire that says, hey, yeah, this is the job you want. These are the employers. And then you have to go home, do some homework, and then report back. And you can continue having that relationship with the employment counselor. In the Elevate program, although we finish a 10-week program, clients graduate, we then have a 6-month support. So we provide 6 months of ongoing support, and I connect with people 2, 3, 4 years after the event. I connect with them on LinkedIn. And I think that the other part of the employment job search plan is also building that network. And that comes by just that one person, and then you show up to the next event, and you show up to the third event. Very soon you will develop a network. But you've got to be proactive. You've got to connect with people, right? And that is hard. That is so hard. But unfortunately, sometimes you just have to keep doing that.
It's so interesting. One of the things that came through time and time again on the previous set of mentorship sessions was the need for a mentor and how important a mentor can be. And it's interesting. I mean, the whole concept of mentorship. Oftentimes, mentors find you, and because one of the questions that came up time and time again is, how do I find a mentor? And it's not the natural thing, I don't think, to reach out to somebody. You see that they're a VP or they're in the job that you want one day, and you reach out to them and just say, "Hey, will you be my mentor?" I don't think that works personally. I think mentors find you. What will happen is you join that organization, you show that you're willing to learn, they like you, and they say, I want to help that person. And they hone in on you and say, tell me what you need. How can I help you? Because good people that have reached a certain point, they want to give back. And this industry is full of amazing mentors and that want to help the next generation, that want to help people that perhaps they were a newcomer and they know exactly how it feels to start, a new career in a new country. And they just are thrilled to pass that knowledge on and support. So again, there's so much good that can come from your attitude that you mentioned.
Absolutely, and you're so right. When you're in the job, or even when you're in the process of getting into the employment, into the labor market, there will be people that you will connect with. And what I really tell newcomers is that in Canada, it's okay to ask for help. It's okay. You don't have to know everything. And, I come from a culture where we didn't ask people for help. We just had to do it ourselves. But in Canada, no, it's okay with the idea that you're going to pay it forward. At some point, you will also provide that same support that somebody gave you. And I think that in the job, like you said, they will find you. I think that, sometimes when you go up to, for example, Nicole, I've been with you for this 6 months. I'm working with you. How am I doing? Where can I improve? And you will give me some advice and you give me some support. But then I have to be strong enough to say, hey, I'm listening to what Nicole is saying. This is where I need to make a change. Many newcomers, we don't understand that. We don't understand, what did you mean by that? And so again, that means I have to ask you another question because I didn't understand that. And now I need my language. So I'm shy to ask you. And we leave it at that. So I think it is really about having that good relationship with your supervisor, your coworker, your manager, and really sort of spend time understanding the feedback and then doing something with that. What point you telling me all these things I need to improve, and then 2 months later I haven't changed, and then what will you do? You say, well, this person's not changing. I'm wasting so much energy, but there's no change happening.
Yeah, there's no checking in, and that comes from leadership too. I think having the right manager, and you don't always get that. You might, and you might be very lucky and successful in that area, but I think as an individual, it's up to you to seek out managers too. If it's not your direct manager, maybe there's somebody else in the organization that you do have that rapport with, that maybe they're from the same country you were from, and they'll just help you manage up, if you will. And again, you use terms like that. Not newcomers won't necessarily understand that, but it's quite simply, helping you do well in your job, working with that manager that you have. That relationship may not change, but it doesn't mean you can't do your best to make the most of it. It just, again, it's the right guidance and support.
I think, Nicole, something that you mentioned, and I think I look at my own experience. The job that I was doing, I could do that really well. I'm totally creating, coming up with new thinking, new ideas. But then there comes a point where I can do more. I can do more. And so I'd go to my managers and, directors and say, hey, I can do more. And so when you say that, you've got to be prepared that they're going to give you more.
Yeah.
Right? And that is another thing, is to ask that I can do more. But then what happens, and I learned through the Canadian style, is, if I'm looking for promotion, I'm not going to get a straight wage increase or a title. No, I have to continue doing my existing job and elements of my new position.
And earn it.
Earn it. And sometimes we don't realize that's how the system works. That's how it works in Canada. And then when I am able to grasp and do the new duties, I let some of those other things go. And then I take on more duties. And I think that, again, is about something you mentioned. You've got to be proactive. You've got to work to get to where you want to go.
Yeah. And I mean, it's certainly an element of making sure that people are aware that you're doing these extra duties, and you don't want to be doing two people's job and then feel overwhelmed and burnt out. You want to protect yourself in that respect. But I couldn't agree more. It's almost like you're earning that new role and that those new responsibilities. It's a great thought. We haven't gotten to 3 of our areas, so I definitely think if you're open to this, we should do another one of these.
Absolutely.
And then cover off the last 3 areas, because it's been an absolute pleasure. And I love the fact that you keep bringing up case studies, because I think it's important for people to hear success stories. I think, you mentioned earlier, like a buddy to work with. almost like an accountability buddy. You work together, you tell each other, let's apply to 5 jobs today, let's apply to 10 jobs a day, and do it right, and let's keep each other motivated, because there's a lot of no's sometimes. And so it's, how do we stay motivated? How do we put that week behind us and move forward to next week and feel motivated? I had the same situation with someone I was working with, and she was doing everything right. I mean, that was the hard part. I was coaching her, and I was reaching out to employers, and that was the hardest part. She was doing everything right. It was just timing. It was right at the beginning of the pandemic, and people weren't necessarily taking a chance or hiring at that time. So it was super challenging. And she did find a role, and she actually wrote a blog for FoodGrads, and it was I was so happy. It's lovely to hear those success stories. And actually on FoodGrads we do have quite a few blogs of stories like that. I think it's really important to share stories. They're not always going to be those wonderful, it took me 2 months and I landed my perfect job. That's not always reality. But it's nice to hear other people's stories.
Absolutely. I think that, sometimes when you hear these and you're part of those creation of people's different lives, I think it gives you validity and, understanding as to why is it that I'm doing what I'm doing. And I honestly believe in the potential of newcomers and just people, and that you can achieve what you want to achieve. And you've got to have that mindset. That's a winning mindset.
I love that. Let's end there. The potential of newcomers, and we will do another session dedicated to newcomers. I'll share details. I want to thank everybody for joining us today. Shahina, thank you so much for your wisdom and your expertise. I kind of put you on the spot saying it live that we'll do another one, because now you can't get out of it.
I look forward to it.
Awesome. I really appreciate it. And again, thank you, everybody. Please visit careersnow.ca, and we'll look forward to seeing you next time.
Thank you, Nicole. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.